The anatomy of a walk. How do we start? At Anim School, and at really any studio, we do very pose to pose, stepped style animation, which is very traditional to 2D. You're going to start with your contact pose, then you're going to go to your down pose, your passing pose, your up pose, and your contact pose again. These are your key storytelling poses. These are the main poses. You're going to stamp those down. So this is what it will basically look like. On frame 0, you'll have your contact. On frame 12, you'll have your contact, but it's mirrored, right? It's flipped. And on frame 24, you'll have your contact, which is the exact same pose as frame 0, but it's pushed forward in space. And then basically what we do is break down. So what's the in-between of your contact pose? And that would be your passing pose. So now you go to your frame 6, which is your in-between frame, right? We're breaking it down. We're doing our in-betweens, which is literal in-betweens. This would be your passing pose. The in-between of those is your down pose, right? That's very basic kind of blocking style. So how do we build that contact position? Paying attention to the hips. The hips twist a little to favor the front leg and adjust the body up or down to fix those legs. The way to kind of fix the legs when because you have this pose here, and ideally with your contact pose, your front foot's going to be straight. Your back foot's going to have a slight bend to it. It's going to look straight, but there should be a slight bend to it. And if you find that you twist those hips even slightly, those knees are going to shift. Now you got to counter the body up to then straighten those legs out again. The leg in front will be straight and the leg in back will be slightly bent. It'll look straight, but there's going to be some bend to it, and that's only to help with popping. That's going to help keep that back leg from popping. All right, and your feet, we're going to move them into position, right foot forward, left foot back, could be the other way around, doesn't matter. But use the foot roll controller to raise the foot or raise the heel. Okay, that's why you have that foot roll, use that. The chest and arms move counter rotate to the hips, right? So if that left leg is forward, the right arm is going to be forward. The right shoulder is going to be forward. Whichever leg, opposite arm, right? Left leg forward, right arm forward. So this is probably the most complicated part of the walk cycle, which is those arms, as well as those knees, those arms mostly, because what you don't want to do is just like elbow and wrist are equal to each other and you just have this robotic, action figure kind of walk. What's happening is your upper arm. So when I use the term upper arm, I'm talking about this joint right here, your shoulder joint, right? Which is in your shoulder, but it's not actually your shoulder joint. It's just the joint that's in your shoulder. That's your upper arm, which controls the upper part of your arm, right? The shoulder joint is actually right here in the clavicle, or what I think that's what that's called. And it pivots from here and raises your actual shoulder. So when I say your shoulder controller, I'm talking about actually raising your shoulder. Upper arm is raising up the upper part of the arm. Lower arm is the actual elbow hinge, right? And then your wrist. So your upper arm and lower arm, right, you're going to have a delay. So the upper arm is going to move first, and then the lower arm is going to catch up and be delayed and pulled back down. So you're going to have a secondary kind of action, right? Lead and follow. You're going to lead with the upper arm, follow with the lower arm. It's going to be like the chain, right? Everything, this moves and then drags you, and then you have the offset. But the hardest part is when you're walking, the arm is going to swing forward, and then as it comes back, it's going to swing back around, avoiding the side of the body. So you're going to have like this, right? And the reason why it's hard is because your rotation, your axes that you're going to have that rotate Y is going to start impeding, and it's just going to get kind of confusing and kind of tough. And that's where we need to really pay attention to our curves and what we're doing, making sense of each orientation and why it's orienting like that. Something to keep in mind, right? We want to break up the character. Look at this front view and how everything's offset. The elbow's out while the wrist's kind of in. You want to keep the arms close to the hips, but you don't want them penetrating through the hips. But you also don't want the arms too far out because then it'll look like scrawny tough guy. The back arm rotates outward with a slight bend in forearm, right? So it comes in, passes through the body, and then comes out. right? And then what you're going to see when you actually track the wrist is like a figure 8 kind of motion. Building your down position. So that was your contact position. Now these are the things to think about when you're building your down position. Your body and legs go down, right? Taking the impact of the weight. So I don't know if you've heard this before, but basically a walk is just a series of controlled falls. So a walk is just throwing yourself off balance and constantly catching yourself and with this continual momentum. And that's what we're doing. So when you're taking your down position, you're compressing and you're taking on the impact of weight. So your front leg is going to bend to take on that weight as your back foot starts to roll up to continue that cycle, right? Your hips and your chest will start to tilt as they take on the weight. This is the part that a lot of people get tripped up on, because you would imagine that if you're putting weight on your left leg, and this isn't the best pose, you would imagine that if you're lifting your right leg to take the step, that your hip would lift up to favor that right leg. But in actuality, it's actually going to drop down. Really what's going on is this force is being driven up the leg, causing that hip to shift up that way, right? And because there's no weight on this side, because you are lifting up this leg, it's going to drop the hip down on this side. So what you have is like this shape. As that leg comes up, you're going to have a counterposto with those shoulders facing the other way. So everything's counter to each other. You know what I mean? So that's what's going to be happening. Is this the straightest leg, the leg you're putting weight on, is going to shift that hip up. So the chest and the hips tilt opposite of each other, and the body weight has shifted to the planted leg. I'd rather see this guy a little bit more over the weight. So like he's over here, something, maybe not this drastic, but actually translating him over to that leg. Because if you try standing evenly, like shoulder width apart, and then without shifting your body weight, lift one leg, it's impossible. You can't do that. You have to shift over to one side of the foot to then allow yourself to move the other leg, and then go to the other side to then move the other leg, right? We all know how walking works. So you want to shift that weight onto the planted leg. The arms are straight because this is your passing pose, right? The arm's going to straighten out in your passing pose. And then as it comes to the apex, it's going to start folding and then it's going to go again. I'd act it out, but I keep busting my knuckles on the table every time I do. But it's like, it's a walk. So like when you get a chance, when you actually start blocking it out, stand up and swing your arms and really feel where they bend, where they straighten out, and why. That's, I mean, again, being an animator is, I don't want to say easy because it's not, but one of the greatest things when you're animating people is that we are people. So like if you're just at your desk and your character's reaching for something, reach for something at your desk and feel what that feels like. The arms are pulled down by gravity, right? In that front view, the arms are going to be pretty straight as they pass by the body. So now we then move on to our up position. By the way, that was our passing position. This is kind of like when the cycle kind of repeats. So this is us like putting force up to then drop back down to then push it up again, right? So you have this bouncing ball effect with the hips. But the hips and the chest are still tilted as the arms are swinging faster than the legs. Typically, like the arms swing faster, but they hold at the apex a little bit longer, while those feet feel they're pretty even spacing, but the arms are kind of, and that's just to provide a little bit of contrast between the two. And the arms serve a purpose as like balance, and it provides momentum. So seeing them swing pretty fast helps give a little bit of texture to it. The arms are swinging faster than the legs. The front forearms is starting to bend. And the back foot is slightly rolling. Back leg is mostly straight, and the body is at its tallest, right? So this is where the body is at its tallest. That's why it's your up position. The heel is slightly off the ground, but that back leg is straight. And I will say these are very general kind of to get you started. If you were to plug in all of these poses and hit play, and we'll spline it and then hit play, it would look like garbage. So there's going to be obvious tweaks we're going to be making, but this is just a starting point. And must be said too, we all walk differently. So even though I say vanilla walk cycle, what does that vanilla walk cycle look to you? What's your interpretation of that? Because you are going to be looking at your own reel or your own reference and pulling from that. Don't copy it. So don't be afraid to push it, embellish, make your walk cycle better than your real life walk cycle.